Okay. So, do you see my screen now? It is, so first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar that we have co-organized with Michele. It is Safe Campus with ESD. It is first time we're organizing a webinar like this, given the interest that has come increasing, especially in the last years, in order to bring empowerment self-defense to campus, to the students, to the faculties, in order to use it as a violence prevention methodology. So my name is Gentiana Susai, and I am director of ESD Albania. That is the organization that is calling this webinar. We are an action-driven organization. Our interest for ESD in universities has started years ago. We have started with the ESD in Schools project in Albania, where we have included ESD as one of the 8 activities for extracurricular program that is for high schools and elementary schools. And this is in partnership, it has been in partnership with ESD Global Self-Defense, with El Halev based in Israel. We've collaborated also with our partner organizations like UN Women and the Swedish Corporation. And so based on that, we've seen also other good practices that are developed in the universities. And the experience that Michele will share with us tonight is a very valuable one. She has been developing this in the last 3 years. And the objective of the goal of this webinar is that she shares with us her challenges, the program itself, and how can we replicate it in more locations. It takes only a simple Google search to find many articles published on social media or published on other channels. There are plenty of reports that indicate how terrible the situation is, how terrifying it is when it comes to sexual harassment, when it comes to bullying or to other forms of gender-based violence for students in campus. And that has been our starting point when planning and when wanting to collaborate with the different universities in order to make USD accessible to these students. From a recent report or survey conducted in Europe, it is shown that nearly 2 in 3 respondents have experienced gender-based violence, that almost 1 in 3 respondents have experienced sexual harassment, and only 13% report gender-based violence incidents. I wanted to put these figures, not because you don't know them, but because it helps us to ground ourselves and to know why we're here, why we're doing this, and why do we need empowerment self-defense in these universities. From research, we have also this information that categorizes like what are the main obstacles in identifying sexual harassment in academia. And there we see that there is preconceived notions about what constitutes sexual harassment that did not necessarily concur with lived experiences. We see that navigating an often blurred or ambiguous line between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. And the third category is the existence of competing interpretations of what had happened. So it's this is like the situation that we find, and what has motivated us to keep working. And we know that some of you are already in a university that has initiated a project for ESD with the students, as well as plans are going on. So Michele is Michele Johnson Blimes. I'm very happy to share this space with her. She's an ESD instructor based in Hawaii, She is also a university instructor teaching courses on intercultural communication, personal and public speech, and student development. Michele acts as an advisor for Affirmation Hawaii chapter, which is an off-campus LGBTQ support group. She is passionate about women's issues and fighting discrimination in all forms. She holds a master's degree in communication and conflict resolution and a certificate in intercultural peace building. Michele loves theater, yoga, and travel. She has 3 grown daughters and currently lives in Ohio with her partner and a stray cat-turned-pet cat called Wheat. So we met with Michele in 2019. Michele was also a participant in the level 1 training that ESD Global was organizing in New York in that year. We were actually sharing we were sharing the room in the camp. So I still can remember the long conversations we had after those intense training days. And we've been in contact, and we have talked a lot about how she has developed the program and how has she made it as a part of the program of the university. So before giving the floor to Michele, I would invite everyone to put on chat why and how are you interested? How do you see yourself in bringing ESD to a university that might be in your city or in your country, so that we have an idea of the interest you have about this webinar, but also in order to continue with the exchange of information regarding ESD in universities. So if you can just write directly on the chat, and we can go reading as you participate. Let's see if you have time. Let's give a couple minutes so that you can all write something there.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What is your interest in bringing ESD to your country? Are you interested to bring ESD to a given university that might be in your city or in your country, in order to so that we know a little bit what are your expectations as well regarding this webinar and also the discussion we're gonna have afterwards? Or simply to say that if you are interested or not in developing an ESD program in a given university. Yes, as we read from the comments, and some of you do know that several from our network of ESD instructors, not only in Europe, globally, are collaborating with universities and are teaching ESD classes there. Also, it has been very important, the news shared by My Power app in the last days, given the collaboration with Nazarbayev University. We have Aray from the university here as well in Kazakhstan, that it's a partnership agreement. My Power app is a tech company based in Israel, and the app that they have developed brings ESD in your mobile phone. So that makes it very accessible. So while you continue, please keep writing, please keep sharing what are you doing or what are you planning to do with the universities. I'm very pleased to give the floor to Michele, and please feel free to share screen and you can continue with your presentation.
All right, I was just looking at some of the ideas in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for some slides here. All right, so I'm really excited to be here to share how I brought empowerment self-defense to my local university. So first, a little bit about myself. So Gentiana mentioned that I We met in 2019 at the level 1 ESD Global training. So I'm an ESD level 1 graduate from 2019, so about 4 years now. I achieved level 2 in 2021. Especially because of my teaching at a university, I probably have enough hours now to be level 3, but I haven't gone through all of the steps. I think one of the things that's getting in my way is you have to record yourself teaching a class, and I haven't gone around to, getting permission from the students and having somebody come and record me, but someday. I have a bachelor's degree and master's degree in communications. I have been teaching ESD for 6 semesters so far. So I started teaching ESD depends, different universities call it different, each semester something different, but I started in what my university calls winter semester, 2020, which was really a fun time to start teaching ESD. I made it about halfway through the course, and that was when COVID hit and everything shut down, and I had to turn it into an online class. So that was fun. And then took a few semesters off because the university wasn't interested in me offering the class as a fully remote online class. And I got back in, I think, spring term of 2022. And then I've been consistently teaching one section of the class every semester since then. I've also taught some non-credit classes. So I'll talk a little bit about the difference, at least at US universities, between classes for credit, non-credit classes. When I first got back from the New York training, there was another instructor that trained with me named Reka. Some of you may know her. We put together a couple of 5-week workshops, which presented the full training that we were offered in through ESD Global. I've done some 90-minute workshops through the university's Women's Center. I've also been invited, some of the resident hall advisors plan weekly activities, and I've been invited to teach for them as well. I also teach intercultural communication, personal and public speech, and introduction to university life. So that's me, and that is my background. I'm just gonna check and see if there's anything in the chat here. Okay, great. All right, so the first thing that often people want to know about teaching at a university, teaching ESD at a university, is how do you get your foot in the door? And this is probably the hardest part. Like, once you get in, you need to figure out, how are you going to teach? What are you going to teach? But the harder part is actually getting your foot in the door. And the first thing to think about is, who do you know that works at a university? In the US, we have community colleges. I know there's a lot of people on in this webinar from Europe, so I might be using terminology that's slightly different since I'm coming from a US framework. But so think about, what places of higher learning are close to you and that are close enough that you'd be willing to drive to. And then, do you know anybody that has any kind of association with the university? There's the phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's really important, having connections to just get you in the door. The person might not even do any kind of job that would be related to getting you in for teaching, but they can introduce you to somebody. So that's going to be the first step. Do you know anybody, even if it's a student, even if it's somebody working some way in the university, to help you get your foot in the door and make some introductions. I have some suggestions of who you could contact. So if there's not somebody that you know personally, go to the university or college or whatever Institute of Higher Learning's website and see what are some of the job titles. Oftentimes you'll be able to find the emails there, and you can email somebody. So for an academic class, and I'll talk a little bit later about the difference between like an academic class and a class that wouldn't be for credit, some suggestions would be the department chair. So when I first started trying to get my ESD class in as a university class, I went to the exercise science department on campus. I knew some other people who'd been teaching ESD at a university through, you know, sports science, exercise science, kinesiology, different places like that. So I started there because I thought, okay, this is a class that is mostly activity based, and we'll see what I can do. So I met with somebody from the exercise science department. Once I explained what the class was and how empowerment self-defense focuses just as much on like the verbal skills, the awareness skills, the boundary setting skills as the physical skills, that person told me that they didn't think that the ESD classes I would be teaching it would fit very well as an exercise science class. At the time, they had been offering also what they called activity classes. So maybe like bowling or surfing or jogging. And for those classes, they specifically wanted things where the student would be moving most of the time. And so even though ESD class does usually have a lot of like games and moving around there, I also was planning to, you know, have discussions and other types of activities that weren't necessarily doing the physical skills the entire time. So that didn't work, but there's also other departments that might be interested in having an empowerment self-defense as part of their department. And depending on what your background is, it could be like social work, psychology, sociology. My university has a peace building department, and they were actually slightly interested in my course. And I ended up teaching, I teach it right now in a department called student development. So it's not a major that students can have, but it is a department for classes that would just generally help with students development. So like careers, learning about careers. My university is very small, so that it doesn't have a lot of offerings, but bigger universities have a lot of different offerings. And I actually was already teaching an introduction to university life class in the student development department. And so once I got in conversation with people to figure out where it would fit, that made the most sense, where it wasn't exactly a completely physical class that would fit as an activities class or an exercise science, but it was a class that would help students to develop a skill, like an important life skill. And so I teach it in the student development department. And again, it's really good to kind of like look at a university's website, see what kind of classes they offer. Often there's a place where you can look at the catalog to see what kind of classes they offer. Sometimes you can look at something it's called class search or schedule search. Sometimes you have to be able to log in. So like as a student or somebody who works for the university, to be able to see the classes that are being offered each semester. But if you're able to do that, it's really great to kind of look and see the different categories of classes and what they're called, and see if you can figure out a place where ESD might fit. And then you can find the department chair for that department. Usually their emails are online, and you can start there and see if they'd be interested in offering it as part of a certain department. The dean of students is some place that you could try, because this is the person that is usually over, you know, the students' well-being. Anything that's going on with students is often the dean of students. I actually skipped over the dean of students when I didn't have success with the exercise science department. I went straight to the academic vice president. Again, I work at a very small university, and so it was a little bit easy to get my foot in the door there, because I was already teaching as a part-time adjunct instructor. My partner is a full-time faculty member, and so when I emailed the academic vice president, he kind of knew who I was already. And so it wasn't just an email that was being sent randomly. So he agreed to meet with me right away. So that was something that helped me to get in the door. But definitely, so these are just the titles that are from my university, but you can kind of look and see if there are similar titles, similar places where you could find emails and send an inquiry saying that you're interested in teaching empowerment self-defense. So that would be for an academic class. For a non-credit class or a workshop, some places you might want to contact would be if the campus has a women's center. So like I said, I have taught some classes for through the women's center, so they advertise the classes for me. Sometimes universities have like student outreach, sometimes it's called community outreach or student activities. Reka and I taught a community outreach class through that department, and it was offered for both community members and for students. And so that was where we offered the 5-week courses when we first finished our ESD training. Residential life, contacting somebody from residential life. The resident advisors often, one of their jobs is to plan activities for the students in the dormitories. And so I've done that as well. The one I haven't done yet that I think would be useful is the person who's in charge of a new student orientation. I've actually been in contact with a different university in my area about possibly doing some kind of workshop at a new student orientation. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I had a question in the chat about getting paid. And I have gotten paid for my academic classes that I've taught, but the non-credit classes I have not gotten paid for thus far, in part because I was new and starting out, and in part because that involves a little bit of like negotiation and figuring out like how much to get paid, whereas with an academic class there tends to be a set rate for how much you get paid, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Any questions so far? You can go ahead and put any questions in the chat and I can answer them as I go as well. Okay. So once you get your foot in the door, so you send an email and the person says, yes, I'm interested in this. Let's meet, whether it's like in person or in Zoom. So when I sent my email out, I got a positive response. The person I asked for a meeting, this was before COVID, so we met in person. Now, a lot of times they'll just say, let's meet via Zoom, which is also great. I sent the university a 2-page information packet. And it included, and I'll actually share it in the chat in a second here, but it's a really good idea when you're working with university to present statistics and academic research. So I put together, and actually, let's see, whoops, go back here. Let's see, no, I don't think I can share, but I'll share it at the end. Is to present it in an academic fashion. They like that. And so at the bottom of this screen here, I have an example where I'm sharing a statistic of 27% of college women have experienced some form of unwanted sexual conduct. And then I've included the author of the academic research, and I formatted it in kind of like the citation. It probably doesn't matter what kind of citation, but if it looks really official, universities like that. And so I put together about 4 or 5, 6 different statistics related to sexual assault, sexual harassment. And the thing is, universities know this. They already know this. And so in some ways, it's very easy to have people be very accepting of this idea that some kind of training would be helpful for university students, because they already know the statistics and they really want to not have sexual assault on their campus. It's a very bad look when it comes out, in the news that there've been sexual assaults on their campus. So they want to do things. They would love to have some kind of preventative training on campus. And so it's a good idea to present these statistics and then focus on prevention, on the ways in which ESD can prevent further sexual assault on campus. The graphic that I have on the side, I got from an organization that teaches ESD. When I first started, I was kind of, trying to learn everything I possibly could. And this graphic, I think it was a blog post that Martha Thompson wrote. I forget what organization she works for. But it included this graphic that includes some of the most well-known research that has been done on ESD and the effectiveness of it in reducing women's risk of sexual assault. And so this is also really great, where they love to see, the charts and the graphs and the research that's showing, yes, it actually does. Empowerment self-defense training actually does prevent sexual assault. And so they love to see this. Yes, so I will share the document. Let's see. Okay, I can do it here from the chat. I wasn't sure how I could do it while I had my screen shared, but I will share it right now. Okay, let's see. For some reason, okay, I see what's happening. Okay, I am not able to share it right this second, but I will before the end of the webinar. And then the last thing about sharing it with a university, somebody at a university, is to really talk about how empowerment self-defense is different from martial arts, because oftentimes universities already offer some kind of martial arts-based self-defense, so like Aikido or karate. And so sometimes they'll say, oh, well, we don't need your service because we already have this. The university that I work at has an Aikido-based self-defense class. And one semester I had for some reason, my class and the Aikido class were offered at the same time. And they were both offered in places that were called studios. So the Aikido class was offered in the dance studio and my class was offered in the fitness studio. And on the first day of class, one of my students accidentally went to the Aikido class, and I get an email afterwards that she was like, I accidentally went to the wrong class. And so sometimes they'll think, oh, we don't need this class. We already have a self-defense class. But if you can present empowerment self-defense as something that is different from martial arts, I often tell the story that I read an article online that in the early days of self-defense, in women's self-defense, there were women who were doing martial arts, and they found that when they got into dangerous situations, it was really difficult for them to pull up their very specific technical martial arts training to protect themselves. And so empowerment self-defense, as we know, adds in this idea of what happens, before you get into the situation where you might need to use a physical skill. So awareness, understanding of our trauma responses, using our verbal skills and our boundary setting skills, and then having these physical skills that anyone can learn, right? That anyone can use, that are simple enough to use in a moment of trauma. And so that presenting it in that way and helping the university understand how empowerment self-defense is different from martial arts really has helped me to get my foot in the door and to help people understand that it's something that everyone can use. It's not the same as a class they might already be offering. And here are the statistics showing, there is a problem, and ESD has been shown via academic research to be able to reduce this risk. And so they love it. I mean, I really have not gotten any pushback from universities. Sometimes, right, it's an issue of like where I haven't been able yet to get paid for the classes that aren't being offered for credit. So that could be an issue where they're like, we would love to have you come and teach, but then finding the money to pay you for those types of classes might be where you would hit a roadblock. But teaching it as a university class that students get credit for, that has been easier for me to be able to get paid to do it. Any questions? I'm gonna actually stop my sharing really quick and see if I can get that document. what happens is I had it open already, and so when I tried to load it, it was like, sorry, this document is already open.
¿Qué haces? Ah.
So Michelle, you can also send the document at the end since we're recording, so just not to cut the
Okay,
flow of the
there you
presentation.
go. All right. Okay, so it's in the chat now. And if anybody has any questions, let me know. Okay, so you get your foot, you send an email, they say we want to meet with you, you get your foot in the door, you've presented empowerment self-defense, and they love it. They say, we want this, we know sexual assault and sexual harassment is a problem on campus, we definitely want you. And then you've got to figure out, okay, what kind of class do you want to teach? What kind of class do you want to teach at the university? And so I mentioned that often universities will offer classes for credit or non-credit classes. And so for credit means that the students are getting academic credit for taking the class. A non-credit class then would be those classes where it's workshop, maybe a one-time workshop that you're offering through like the Women's Center, through the resident advisors. Maybe it's a couple of time workshop, but the students aren't getting college credit. They're taking the class out of their own interest, and it's just a special class is being offered, but they aren't getting academic credit for it. And so if you decide you want to teach a credit class, you need to decide how many credit hours the class is going to be worth. And I'm realizing that it is probably different in universities and other places besides the United States. So in the United States, classes could be 1 credit, 2 credits, 3 credits, 4 credits. A typical university class in the United States is a 3 credit class. So let's say an English class, history class, something like that. Sometimes language classes are 4 credits or math classes are 4 credits. But oftentimes activity-based classes like empowerment self-defense are not worth the same as a class like English or history. And so some of the classes like what did I mention, like bowling, archery, whatever, might be a 1 credit class. And so a 1 credit class typically would meet probably like 2 hours a week. So a lot of times the credit hours have to do with like how many hours per week the class meets, at least at the at US universities. But an activity class that's 1 credit often means it will meet for 2 hours a week, but it has no homework. It doesn't have any kind of assignments outside of the class. The whole class is showing up, participating in the activity. A lot of ESD classes are offered this way. And based on most of our trainings, right, we've been taught how to teach the class, in person. There's usually not any kind of assignments or activities outside of class. So a 1 credit class is one way that you could teach empowerment self-defense. I was able to present my class as a 2 credit class. Oftentimes when you get paid at a university, you get paid per credit hour. So it was appealing to me to get paid for 2 credits instead of 1 credit. And then I added in some assignments and some homework for the class, some reading materials, some videos for the students to watch and participate in. And so that made it a 2 credit class. So the class would typically meet 2 hours per week with some homework. And then that counted as a 2 credit class. I have had some interest in me making it into a 3 credit class so that it could count as a class in the peace building program. But I'm not sure I'm actually interested in doing that because I actually really like the way I have the class set up now, where it's primarily an activities-based class with a little bit of homework and activities outside of class. And so then there's the question, right? Are you going to have homework or no homework for the class? And if you do assign homework, what should that be? So again, Tiana and I are going to talk about how we'd like to offer a workshop where I'll go into more detail about how I've set up the college class, but my class does have homework. The students will do some readings on certain topics and participate in discussion boards. They plan their own ESD activity, and they do a reflective essay at the end of the semester. And so my class that I do does have homework. But depending on how you want to set up the class, you could have it as a class with homework or without homework. And typically, if it's a class with no homework, it'll probably be a 1-credit class. And this, again, might look different in European or other universities. So you'd have to look into that. And it's a really good way to do that is to go to the university website, look at the class schedules or the catalogs, and see, what kinds of classes are being offered and how often they're being offered, and whether it looks like they have homework or not. Okay, so then you figure out, okay, how many credits it's going to be, are you going to have homework, and then figuring out when and how often the class will meet. And again, it's really good to look at, if you can get into the university's website, look at when other classes that maybe are activity type classes are being offered. So sometimes classes are offered for a full semester, and depending on how many credits they are, they might be offered once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. My university, for a full semester class, a 2-credit class is offered twice a week with for 50 minutes each time. And I found that to not really work, because I think 50 minutes is not enough time to do an ESD class, because I usually include an opening circle and a closing circle. And so 50 minutes isn't really enough time between those two to really get into some activities. And so what I decided to do was offer my class for an hour and 50 minutes once a week. So that was the same as meeting 50 minutes twice a week with a 10-minute break in the middle. And what ended up happening is the first semester that I offered it after COVID, and it was going to be a full semester class, not enough students registered for the class, because sometimes when you're starting a new class, you need to really advertise it. And I tried to advertise it, but it was right when students were coming back after COVID, and I got some posters up, and I didn't have enough students at the beginning of the semester. And so I suggested, well, what if we make this a second block class? So I had already been teaching a class. My intercultural communication class is offered as a second block class. So it starts in the middle of the semester, and then it kind of meets for double the amount of time for just half of the semester. And they offer that type of class because sometimes students will drop out of a class in the middle of the semester, or before the middle of the semester, and then they need to add a new class. So they figure, oh no, I'm not taking enough credits to get my scholarship. And so they'll add this class. And so now I've been teaching it as a second block class, and it meets an hour and 50 minutes twice a week for 7 weeks. And so different universities have different lengths of classes. And so my university is 14 weeks plus exam week. Some universities are 15 or 16 weeks plus exam week. So my university is 14 weeks. So now, since I'm teaching it as a second block class, it's a 7-week class, and it meets twice a week for an hour and 50 minutes. And different universities have different rules about the number of hours that count for a certain amount of credits. And so that might be something to look into to figure out how many hours of class. So my class that I've created is 25 hours of class time, but it might be different. And, I see in the chat that Ellie taught a 7-week hour and 25-minute course that met once a week. And that time frame can work really well. And I don't know, Ellie, if that was a 4-credit class, 9-credit class, and how many credits the students got. So that all matters. And so you can ask the person from the university, about how it works, how long the class should be. to count for a certain number of credits, depending on how much you want to teach. I've also seen courses, self-defense courses, being offered as like a weekend course. So maybe like 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday, and then that counts usually maybe like as a 1 credit class. So this is a good, question to ask, like, how many hours are required for a certain number of credits. And again, this is probably different wording at universities outside of the US. But sometimes you have the opportunity to choose when, when is convenient for you to offer the class, whether it's going to be like a long weekend class, whether you're going to offer it over the course of the whole semester, part of the semester, what days of week work for you. Sometimes it's going to depend on what kind of space is available on campus. I'm usually like any kind of open space works, but in the photo here, this is a fitness studio where they offer like yoga classes, and it works really, really well. And let's see, something I don't have on here, but that Ellie mentioned in class in the chat is that she offered her class as a pass-fail class. So the grading was you either pass the class or not. The class that I teach, the students do get graded for it. And so they get graded for coming to class. They get graded for the assignments that they do. And then the last thing to think about when it comes to what kind of class that do you want to teach is whether it's going to be single or mixed genders. A lot of us were trained to teach this ESD class to women. At my university, when I offer the class for credit, I cannot specify that it's just for women. I have seen this at US University where it's called Women's Self-Defense. Maybe having the title of Women's Self-Defense would discourage men from registering from the class. My class is called Empowerment Self-Defense. And because of Title IX rules in the US, I am not allowed to say that it's just for women. And so I have been in the class every semester. Usually it's just I limit the class to 20. Sometimes I don't get 20 enrolled, but usually I'll have somewhere between 1 and 3 male students in the class. And so I've organized the class, and I just kind of changed my wording a little bit to make it applicable for all genders. And it's worked out really well. The male students learn a lot about, kind of like what women experience. Some of the topics we cover, like consent, and rape myths. And so I feel like they learn just as much as the women. And sometimes, men can use self-defense skills as well. So then getting paid. So like I mentioned, typically if you are an adjunct or part-time instructor, you get paid by the credit hour. And so it's a set rate. This is just an example. So if the pay rate is $1,500 per credit hour, then if you teach a 1 credit class, then you would get paid $1,500 for the semester. If it's a 2 credit class, you get paid $3,000 for the semester. And I mentioned in my intro that I do have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. It is helpful to have a higher degree to get in to teach at a university, but it's not entirely necessary, at least not in the US. When I started teaching my intercultural communication class, I had a bachelor's degree, and they accepted me to teach a 100 level class. So sometimes universities will allow people with bachelor's degrees to teach lower level classes, or like Empowerment Self-Defense, it's an activity class. They did ask to see my certification, so I have my certificate from ESD Global, and I sent that to them so that they could see, yes, I am trained to be an Empowerment Self-Defense instructor. I am not sure if, because it's not my experience, if somebody who did not have like the lower level, the bachelor's degree, would be allowed to teach a university class, but they might, because it's a special skills class, right? If you're certified to teach this special skill, they may allow somebody without a bachelor's degree to teach, but it definitely does help if you have some higher education to have on your resume to say, yes, I can teach these classes. And then, like I said, I have not been able to get paid to teach a class that wasn't for credit. And part of that was just getting my foot in the door. In the future, I may push to say, hey, can I get paid to teach these one-time workshops, these 5-week workshops? Before COVID, when Rake and I were teaching the 5-week workshops, we were through the community outreach. We were looking into asking the participants to pay a certain amount to take the class, because some of the community outreach classes were being offered for a fee. And then the university probably would have gone along with that because the people taking the class would have been paying to take it. But sometimes the university is a little like, oh, our finances, our budget, we can't pay for this. But definitely it's something you could try to work out to get paid to teach a non-credit class. All right, any questions that have come up so far about any of this? All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is that Ginty and I are putting together a 6-week online training for anyone is interested in learning more about how I turned a 10-hour training into a 25-hour university course. One thing I did was to create some unit themes to go along with the activities that I had learned through ESD Global. And these themes were how I set up the assignments that I gave outside of class. So there were 6 discussion boards that I set up on a learning management system that I use. These themes were boundary setting, mindfulness, healthy and unhealthy relationship patterns, consent, victim blaming and rape myths, and then bystander intervention. And so what I do is I have some of the classes are all ESD activities, physical skills, role plays, things like that. And then 6 out of the 15 classes I base on these themes, and we talk about the videos and the readings that I have them do. I've also, like I said, adapted it to all genders. So I'll talk a little bit about this training and how I adapted it to teaching both male and female students. So I have a question. What kind of feedback did students give after the workshops or the course? So for the university courses, the university has a student survey evaluation for every course. I offer my students extra credit if they fill it out. And so it has questions such as, what went well with the course, what feedback would you give for the course? Most students give me really positive feedback. They really like the course. They feel like they learned a lot. I haven't done my own pre or post test with the course, although that is something I might like to do in terms of what did they learn. They do write an essay, so I always hear from them at the end of the semester. They write a self-reflective essay about what they learned in the course. So I get feedback that way. And then I have the course evaluations. And the only negative feedback I get from the students is that they tell me that the hour and 15 minutes is sometimes, or 50 minutes is sometimes too long. I offer the course in the afternoon because it tends to be a time that students have open where they don't have their more academic classes. And so it meets from 3 to 4:50 twice a week. And so sometimes they tell me, oh, that's too long. But other than that, I've gotten some positive feedback from the course. Any other questions?
Okay, while we go wrapping up the presentation, I'd like to add, you can keep the microphone muted, so yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much. So what I wanted to share with you is what can it be like the next steps. As you know, this training this webinar was designed having as a target group primarily ESD instructors, level 1 and up, in order to bring to them the experience developed by Michele and the training program that she has been offering in her university. Let me show the process. So I would like to summarize what Michele said until now. Is that in the first steps when contacting the universities, she recommends for us to present statistics, to focus on prevention, and to share how empowerment self-defense is different from other martial arts trainings. She also said that universities know about the ongoing problem when it comes to gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and other forms of violence in campus. Universities do want to have preventive trainings, and that's the recommendation is that to teach ESD as a class for which student gets credit, and this would also enable instructors to get paid for what they're teaching, the ESD instructors. Now, as ESD instructors and professionals, it's also our responsibility to do our best in terms of delivering a training that is of good quality, and that we keep growing, we keep learning, we keep sharpening our skills and knowledge when it comes to the way we teach ESD. So that's why creating this space where we want to bring this webinar to a higher level and offer this online training as a way where we can learn all the program that Michele was describing. It's 25 hours of training where students get credit, they get graded, they have homework. So it's all the information and how she manages the group. Now, the steps are not only related to the online training itself. You can see here summarized. We will publish all the information on our LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook channels, where you can find detailed information about this online training. We invite you to express interest, be it now here through the chat, or by sending us a message, or by completing a Google form, where we want to have this interest from the different level 1 instructors or more that want to join. Once you sign up, there will be this group where we will, Michele is gonna lead the learning process for all of us. And upon successful participation, you will get certified as completing this specialized online training for safety on campus. The story would not end there. So after the certification, we would continue meeting once per month as a mentoring space where we can put our questions, where we can discuss challenges, where we can look for solutions depending on how the experience of each of us is developed. And also we can participate, and we will be forming part of the network of ESD instructors that want to bring ESD in the universities. This is something that we would like also to combine it with My Power app. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have the very good example of the University of Nazarbayev and My Power app collaboration when it comes to My Power. And ideally, we would like universities to have a combination of online and in-person trainings, online with the My Power app, and in-person trainings with the instructor, ESD instructor, who is in that city where the university is. So what we are working on, what we are inviting you to join. And the training will start at the end of October. So you have 1 month time to prepare, and why not to also start identifying where would you look at, what university would you pick to start with. So that is the online training we have been working on. And now I open the floor for any questions. You can write on the chat, or you can use the camera.